Hey, everybody.
Hey, I'll just wait about one more minute before I have Dr. Ryan kick us off. Well, welcome everybody. And Dr. Ryan, I'll have you kick us off. We're always very interested in what you have to say, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction.
Thanks, Mayor Harmon. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. The short story is the United States, across the country, across Colorado and the county continue to head in the right direction with declines in case counts, hospitalizations. Unfortunately, fatalities haven't seen the same trend for several weeks trailing the beginning of the decline. Cases are fatalities actually increased. The vast majority of these individuals are the unvaccinated and continue to be the majority of folks who are hospitalized across not only our state, but the country. So that's really the case in short. I'm hopefully optimistic about what the coming weeks will bring. It seems Omicron has done a really good job of dispersing itself across the US and infecting tens of millions of Americans. So bringing us a little closer to that herd immunity or community immunity point between vaccinations and infections among the unvaccinated. We're now approaching that 80+% of Americans who have been impacted by it in one way or the other and are now have antibodies protecting against it. So although I've learned many things over the last 2 years, one thing I have not done and won't do is speculate what's to come. Absolutely nobody knows. As we saw when we're in the midst of Delta and suddenly a new word came up, Omicron, 6 weeks later, very different reality. So I know enough not to speculate about what's to come. So if you're going to ask me, the answer is I don't know. Like I said, I'm hopefully optimistic between vaccine rates across the country and infections as of late. It is getting us closer to that reality of community immunity. Questions, comments, concerns?
What about the new variant that's a subvariant of Omicron?
Well, we're obviously well aware of it. The state of Colorado, the CDC, most importantly, is tracking that. State of Colorado is tracking it. As of last week, there were 2 known cases in Colorado. It was also detected in the wastewater in Boulder. And when you detect something in wastewater, it means it's far more prevalent than 2 people to be that level of detection. So, Chip, to be quite frank, we don't really know exactly a whole lot. Is in that there haven't been a significant number of cases here across this country and or globally to make any sort of draw any conclusions about it. Typically, a subvariant like that isn't going to be terribly different from the original variant. So the expectation is that things aren't going to be very different in terms of transmissibility and severity, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, the impact it might have on a vaccinated person. So it's really those next variants that may or may not come that typically are the biggest concern.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Ryan, you had warned us about this. You've been mentioning this for many months. Today I heard about a new variant they're calling the Russian flu, but it really isn't a flu. It's another form of coronavirus. And, you know, with billions with a B running around, that are unvaccinated around the world, I guess there's a lot of possibilities for mutations and things, but I guess we'll see where that one goes. You've been saying it crop up anytime. We don't know.
Exactly. I mean, this is what viruses do. They mutate, right? Their main goal is to survive and thrive. So they're constantly mutating. And when you have the level that continues to be across the planet in terms of transmission of even Omicron, the opportunity is still there for a new variant to arise. So it's not surprising. I'm, as I said, cautiously optimistic, but one thing I would again reiterate, as I have for years now, we need to be diligent in what we're doing, and we need to be paying attention. As one of the commissioners sent an article yesterday, I think it's very poignant. 1 million Americans dying in 2 years from a communicable disease is not normal. It shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be normalized. It shouldn't be perceived as normal, and it shouldn't be forgotten and moved on. It's at that point when you don't learn your lessons from what you did wrong as a country, as a global community, the potential is there for far greater potential risk in the future. So, are we going to be needing to wear masks again? I don't know. It's certainly a possibility if there is a variant that is far more transmissible and far more deadly than Omicron. I would recommend wearing a mask again and doing those sorts of things. So, it's not pandemic's over, throw away your masks or burn your masks. It's put them in your drawer and potentially wait for what's to come. So, and now that, that's not to say that there is something to come. As I said, I'm not going to speculate. We may be in a much better place in the very near future. But, I certainly don't want to speculate.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't ask your opinion. If we were to do or start perhaps in March some type of a hybrid meeting where folks who desire come in and speak to their mind in person, while others still have the availability to log on via Zoom. What's your opinion on that?
Well, again, I can't say what March is going to look like. It's weeks away. So, if the numbers are what they, could potentially be in terms of continued decline, then yeah, having some folks in a room seems reasonable to me. I would still take some precautions and social distance, and when you fully let your guard down, we know all too well that that's when potential risk walks through the door and infects everyone in the room because there are no measures in place. And I hope that we don't have to continue to do this. It's just the reality of what's around.
Carla, I see you have a question.
Hi, yes, thank you. Hi, Dr. Ryan. We have our Block 57, the old former football field property community meeting coming up this Thursday. So this week, Thursday, and we have discussed possibly having a hybrid meeting where it's Zoom. We've announced it as a Zoom meeting. But talking to Jared this morning, we thought we should pose this question to you from public health to say, should we look at having a hybrid meeting this week, or should we continue to be diligent and just go remote with this one?
And thanks, Carla. That's a good question. The Board of Education a couple weeks ago had a meeting with they did hybrid. There's lots of folks there on site. They required mask wearing at that time, and lots of other people joined via Zoom. So I would say whatever works for you. I would continue to take precautions though if you are intent on filling a room full of people. At this point, there still is community transmission. Our test positivity rate is at 9%, which is 4% less than it was last week. So it's certainly headed in the right direction, but it is not below 5%, which, if you recall, used to be the threshold at which we used to determine whether significant community transmission was going on. So having said all that, I would say, I'm going to enable all to make decisions that is best for them. If you feel you're going to have 150 people who show up, then I probably would suggest you don't. If you have a dozen or 2 dozen who show up and another dozen join on Zoom, I think that's certainly reasonable.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Jared, I think with that, we probably should shoot for hybrid, unless you're expecting more than 12 people. We didn't have a whole lot more than that at our last meeting.
Yeah, and I would add, everyone's risk taking is very different. Some people are very uncomfortable going still to public meetings. So I think offering that hybrid option, I think, is very important, right? Some people aren't going to be comfortable for a while. And that's fine, but making it an option for them to join and still be a part of the conversation, I think, is very important.
All right. Anyone else have anything for Dr. Ryan?
So Dr. Ryan, I hear that one benchmark could be the positivity rate as far as making decisions and trying to do it. We're all trying to predict the future, or can't do that. So we're going by the data, which you've been very good at keeping us informed and keeping us focused on the data and the realities of what's going on. And is it fair to say that that's one objective criterion that we have out there as far as making decisions about reopening to a higher level?
Andrew, good question. I think we're open, right? Are any businesses feeling any sort of restrictions on your capacity or otherwise for quite some time? I think one of the challenges and one of the many things we've learned over the last several years is that any one of these metrics is very difficult to sort of pin everything on, right? Case counts, you could have 10 million cases a month or a week, but severity of disease is quite low, right? So that's not necessarily a valid number. Same with test positivity would go right along with that. So I think it's really a matter of taking into consideration all metrics, right? The fatality rate, the hospitalization capacity and current capacity, the case counts and the test positivity, which indicate community spread, right? If those 2 numbers are high, we know there's very high community spread. And if we're dealing with a variant that is far more severe than the others, that would be a very different picture. So I don't think there's one single metric and there's one single answer for that. I think it's looking at everything in totality and trying to understand the bigger picture. Similarly, things might be fine any given week in Clear Creek County, but they're very different more broadly in this state and even more broadly in the United States, right? Like Alabama, as less than 50% of their population is vaccinated. They're still struggling. Their hospitals are still struggling because there's so many people that are being hospitalized on a daily basis because of the sheer volume of people who are unvaccinated in that state. They're also driving a significant portion of the fatality rate that we're seeing every day. 2,600 Americans on a daily basis is not acceptable 2 years into this. And it's being driven entirely by unvaccinated individuals. So it's a long answer for what was a short question. But I think it's complicated if we've learned anything over the last 2 years.
Any other questions for Dr. Ryan? Well, Doctor, thanks again. It's always very interesting when we have you. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
Gonna move on. I think Jonathan Kane, do you have something for us today?
Mayor, last Economic Recovery Task Force meeting, we had talked about discussing alternatives for liquor consumption on the marketplace this summer. There's 3 options that are being considered right now, but one thing that we need to do is we need to have an administrative staff meeting with Jared and Wonder and Andy and just make sure that we've got the details down to a good point where we feel comfortable sharing them. Is it all right if we have that conversation at our next meeting?
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad we're bringing it up now. It'll be food for thought for folks on the call today. All right, thank you. Gonna go around the room and see how everybody's doing. Hey, Steve, how's business?
Good weekend. Interesting weather on Friday kind of caught people by surprise. There was like storm in Denver and nothing in the mountains, and it was unusual and it caused some havoc. And beautiful day on Saturday, then Sunday, the Super Bowl. Never really know how to judge business on that, if people are going to come out for the Super Bowl or Super Bowl parties at home. It ended up being a pretty good day. I guess most of our efforts right now, business-wise, are trying to figure out menu and business prices going forward with all the costs increase across the board from labor to you name it, and also deal with like the sales tax number of a 9.5% sales tax when our neighboring counties are at 4.5. So it does affect ticket price, bottom line. So working on those, trying to finesse it so we don't scare people away, but we don't go to business, trying to make some money in the long run here. What else? I think that's it.
Steve, I think this is going to be very informative with the sales tax. I know you're right. We do have some neighbors with much lower tax. We even have some with higher tax, like Winter Park, I think is 10.5. I think Fraser is 10.5. So, for me, this will be very interesting. We'll see if it affects the business or not. I did notice curiously on my McDonald's receipt, they're 855 on that. So stay tuned. Be real interesting. Stephanie, how's things going for you?
Can't quite hear you.
What were you saying, Mayor?
I was just asking Stephanie how business was.
Sorry. Business has been good. Steady again. Friday, of course, was that fluke, which of course I had a private party that showed up 2 hours late. Yeah, happens. But they were happy and we kept it going. Saturday was definitely another good one. Not as good as the previous 2 Saturdays, however, which was interesting. And yesterday was decent for Super Bowl.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Chip, how are things going for you?
We're doing okay. Quite honestly, I haven't even seen our number for yesterday yet. So the week was all right. Saturday looked to be a pretty decent day. Just kind of plugging along, I guess.
I noticed there was a Denver station reporting that 9 out of 10 restaurants have already raised the prices on their menu or contemplating it in the very near future. So I personally think that the consumer is aware of this. I mean, I don't see any other alternatives. I hope folks continue to come despite some slight menu increases and maybe a very slight tax increase. So crossing our fingers. Sadie, how are things going for you?
Things are going well. Super Bowl weekends are always a little lighter for retail. People aren't generally out shopping, but we had a strong Friday, Saturday, just because a lot of the increase of skiers coming up the mountain. So that was really good. I resonate with everybody about facing off with raising prices as well as having to absorb and not and be aware of the additional 1% sales tax on my bottom line. I have not really ever done an across the board price increase at Spice and Tea, and we made the choice that we had to this year. So between cost of goods and everything else going up, labor and everything, it was time. So we've already been feeling a little bit of that. I've definitely had some customers say something about it and question me on it. And cost of goods right now is really pricey. Totally separate from my own business. Whenever you want, Mayor, I can share with you the ISMA's feedback on what I promised to bring back to the table. So whenever you want me to talk about that, I can do that.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, so we sat with the ISMA and the members to discuss some of the options you guys had wanted me to talk to them about, which was configuration of Minor Street, common consumption or consumption of alcohol, and then when we would like the Minor Street Marketplace, Minor Street to close, and kind of just some ideas we had to get started. Most of the businesses, pretty much all of the restaurants that are members of the ISMA really love the idea of having Minor Street more configured European style, which means having their service areas start on the sidewalk and extend into the street and having the pedestrian flow go down the center. This is also something that the Downtown Master Plan recommends as we move forward towards configuration in the long run. This would ease for servers and create a lot less problems in that area. So all of the ISMA members, which include all of the restaurants on Minor Street, would prefer that method for this summer. When it comes to the common consumption of alcohol, there were a lot of questions. And like John says, they need to have an administrative meeting. The businesses and the business owners and the liquor license holders had a lot of questions about what would work, what could work, what's too much, colored cups and having different zones, that's too complicated. The overall tone sounded like if we could make it happen to form an entertainment district, that seemed to be their preference just because of the ease for the consumer and not causing so much confusion about who's supposed to drink where and crossing over the avenues and all of those things. But again, lots and lots of questions. So John, maybe you and I could sit down and or I'll shoot you an email of all the questions that came up.
I think the best course of action here would be for us to suggest several alternatives that could be used for this purpose. I want to not throw any water on the idea of an entertainment district because that is certainly one option, but the lift required to do it by May is likely high. I think we might have another path forward that might be a little bit easier for this year and we can keep working towards the entertainment district we want. But I think it might accomplish much of the same goal. One of the things I really want to do is make sure that the administrative burden that happens for our staff is reasonable to handle. And I think that there's some definite things here that we could do that will make sure that that occurs. I also, I've talked with Sadie before and with Steve and other vendors and things like that. And one of the problems that we've talked about is serving, how we serve out, just managing where we serve and how we don't overserve and all those kinds of issues. Because some of our, as we know, some of the places that we have on Minor Street have production licenses, which would be potentially something that we want to be careful about just to make sure that nobody gets somebody in trouble where they can't produce their product that they use to run their businesses. So what I would like to do, and I had I neglected to have Chief when I said that earlier, but I would like to have this little roundtable discussion internally just to make sure we have those alternatives like aligned. And then Sadie, I'd love to meet with you, and especially people who have liquor licenses, I think need to have the say on, everybody does, but we need to make sure that people are comfortable with their licenses being used the way they need to be. So if we were able to schedule this for an agenda item at the next meeting of this group, I think we could have a memo put together that kind of outlines at least 3 options that we could use to accomplish something this summer that would then be able to we could have some discourse about.
Wonderful.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad you mentioned our police chief, because I also would really value his opinion on those options.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the business owners would really like to understand that. So John, if we could, and then if you could get me that memo, I'll make sure everybody gets it. So, and then the last couple of things that the ISMA is recommending is that we close Minor Street the week of May 9th. May 9th is a Monday. So that would offer, like we did last year, street cleaning the first couple of days, moving and reconfiguring barriers, make sure the planters are where they belong, and then allowing businesses to start setting up their outdoor spaces the 11th and 12th. And then that weekend, that Friday, the 13th of May, starting the Minor Street Marketplace. We have talked to the Chamber of Commerce, and we have wanted to do a summer kickoff weekend. And that would be like the grand opening weekend of the market, the first weekend in June, so after Memorial Day, to give all the businesses a couple of weekends to get things under their belt, and then doing the 3rd through the 5th as the summer kickoff, co-hosted with the Chamber. So those are kind of the things that the ISMA is looking forward to partnering with the city on for the Minor Street Marketplace for the summer. And again, any feedback or questions you want me to bring back to them, I will, but that's kind of how everyone is currently feeling about it. Also, one tiny other thing is that, John, I think you and I talked about it, was if we do that reconfiguration, having Two Brothers be able to have like a pickup kiosk kind of a thing. So in the drive, that's something that we all talked about. You and I talked about it, where like having the pull-off zone where there could be the kiosk for Two Brothers to have a pickup. So the ISMA is fully supportive of making sure we're willing to work with businesses that sometimes the Minor Street doesn't support them as much. So.
Well, that's good. Sheriff, I saw your hand go up a minute ago.
Yeah, I was just wondering, since time is marching on, rather than waiting 2 more weeks to talk about it, if maybe we could have a meeting again next week to discuss this.
We're going to need a little bit of time at the city level. I think that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish, but I don't think we're going to be in a place to have good legal alternatives by next Monday. I'm
Okay.
willing to do it, Mayor, if you think we need to put this as our top priority, and we still have 2 grants we need to turn in the next little bit here, and we've got some other things that we've really got to get done. And so I just want to be realistic. We've got to also schedule a meeting with all these stakeholders and make sure that we've got a good consensus from a legal perspective and from an operational perspective. I think that I agree, we need to get this moving, but I would prefer to give you guys a fully built plan that we could look at alternatives on, and what is legal and possible and what isn't. And so I just want to throw that out there.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
Oh, we do. Jared also mentioned that Monday is President's Day.
Right. Any other thoughts on this topic? Okay, moving on. George, you got anything for us?
I do. I know Sadie referenced this, maybe some others, Steve, maybe you mentioned it as well. Had some hard conversations with some retailers around the county in the last weeks. You all probably received a letter from the county talking about the increase in the sales tax. You probably noted that that letter came in the middle of January. If you're anything like me, you probably would think that letter would have been much better had it been received in December. So I just want to acknowledge that. We did reach out to the state to see what the state of the law is, if there's anything that can be done to help make the retailers that didn't collect that increased tax whole. There is not. Unfortunately, the state statute makes it the responsibility of the tax collector to know rate changes and get them implemented. So I think the only thing that I can do is issue an apology that I think that letter should have gone out earlier. I know it has in the past. I know it was on our radar and just did not get done. And so the last thing I want to do is just kind of share with you the hope I have that we will be the kind of organization that thinks about that and gets it done on time in the future. The reason I'm confident is because we have a new finance director. This was one of the first things a new finance director noticed in their job, said, oh God, we got to get a letter out. So that gives me confidence. The other thing that gives me confidence is we funded a public information officer position last year that we'll be hiring. I think that's the kind of position that will help us have just better information relationships across the board, including stuff like this. So I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that. I'm sure it's very frustrating. I know $1,000 out of my pocket would make me very frustrated. It might be more than that for some of you. So please accept my apology, or let me know if there's other thoughts you have.
Hey, thanks, George. Just going around, anything else from staff, Andy or Jared? Think of anything?
I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay,
Not at this time, thank you.
all right. And I just wanted to check in with Cassandra, Ashley, Carla, or Chief. Yes, Carla?
I just wanted to, since I have everyone's attention, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we, like I said earlier, Block 57, former Gold Digger Field, we are having our community meeting, our official community meeting for our final development plan. We are having that Thursday night. It will be hybrid based on what we heard earlier. The link for that meeting will be posted on the city's website, and the meeting itself will be held at the back room at Tommy Knockers. Thank you, Steve, again, for offering that up. And that will then lead us into our planning commission meeting in the end of March, and our middle of March. Sorry, we're asking for a special session there for planning commission, and then hopefully our approval at council at the end of March. So those dates did change a little bit, but the community meeting date did not, and we are full steam ahead.
Carla, I'm sorry, would you repeat one more time what the time and day of that meeting is?
Yeah, it's this Thursday at 6 p.m. at Tommy Knockers, and the link for the Zoom for anyone who wants to attend remotely will be posted on the city's website.
All right, well, that sounds real good. Good to know.
Thank you very much, Chuck, and everyone.
Cassandra, you have anything for us?
I do. Thanks. And I just want to start by saying thanks to those of you who are able to make the Colorado Tourism Office workshop we had a few weeks ago. We're still working on figuring out how to get the results of that work session out to all of you who attended. And we're going to be talking about that at our board meeting tomorrow. So hopefully get that out to you guys later this week. We're also excited. We are working on the strategic plan we mentioned, and hired a company to help build that strategic plan. And we're going to be having another mini work session with key stakeholders coming up in March. So I'll be reaching out to a few of you to discuss that. And it's a great opportunity just to kind of take all of the framework that we've built and kind of put it into one executive place and consolidate it. So really excited about that opportunity. We're also narrowing down the next steps with the Colorado Tourism Office and that project and what that looks like. So we're going to have a busy spring, a lot of different just incentives that we're working on to get us into May. So a lot of behind the scenes grunt work that we're doing, and then trying to restructure our marketing. Usually we've done a lot of heavy marketing in summer. We're going to be marketing in spring and fall this year to really try to even out the revenue streams that are coming to our communities. So we are doing a lot of research and a lot of data collection and things like that at this time. So, but you'll hear more from me as I get some of this stuff bundled up for you.
Well, Cassandra, thank you very much. And I'm really appreciative of the work looking at our some of our slower seasons, because we have ample parking. Although Steve gave us a very interesting note a couple weeks ago with folks getting frustrated even during a slow time of the year, getting back on the interstate and going. But much of the time, parking is not as much of an issue in the slower months. So I really appreciate that. Dan or Wonder, Police Chief Jusick, I'm just wondering, anybody have anything else to add? I appreciate it. Well, if no one has anything else, I want to thank everybody for coming on to the meeting. And oh, yes, E.
I just wanted to, the ISMA members were wanting to know from the city's perspective when we could firm up the date on the closure for Minor Street so we could start planning some marketing around it.
All right. Jonathan and Andy, I see you both have your hand up.
One thing I could say on that is I had mentioned previously in this meeting that the city does want to complete some curb repair on Minor Street, and we want to try to do it in that window between when the street is open and when it closes. I think that will work. We were looking at end of April, early May. We might want to try to get started a little bit earlier. I hope the weather cooperates. But obviously that's the time to get it done, is that in between period when there certainly will be some disruption with that curb repair. So, but I think I'll talk with our Public Works Superintendent, John Bordoni, but I believe that that's certainly a good goal, and we'd like to get in and get out and make sure we're ready to go for the summer season.
Additionally, it may align, but may not. The flowers are going to be here likely on June 2nd. They may be here June 9th if it snows, but that's another thing that kind of goes along with setup. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right.
We also have Clear Creek High School, the graduation parade. They also are wanting to be going when the marketplace is active, because that was really successful last year. A lot of the families sat out on the patios, and that was really a hit last year. So I know that that's something they wanted to, that will be the 21st.
We do need to get them in for a special permit.
Yeah, just let me know when we're going to be doing that round table, John, because
Okay.
I have quite a few on that list.
And oh, sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say one other logistical item we probably need to get going on soon here, given the thoughts about having the pedestrians all in the middle of the street and activating the sidewalk. We've talked about this before as well. We got to ensure that there is access to all businesses, ADA access. And I don't think it's too early. If that's the direction we want to go, and it seems to make sense, I think we could proceed with trying to figure out together what those ramps might look like coming from the street to the curb. As I envision it, that I guess there will maybe some businesses that will be a part of that, some that won't. But I know there'll be certain. I'm gathering there'll be certain sections that will need to have access from the middle of the street up to a business, up to the sidewalk. Of course, we all know that there are a number of businesses in an old town that don't have ADA access today, but there are others that do. So we just need to be, I don't think it's too early to be thinking about that. I think it could be a standard design. Maybe it could be something that could be, we just build X number of them and make sure they're sized right and they meet the proper pitch, and if they need railings, they have railings. I think if we can start working on a design of what that looks like, that would be helpful, because time will march on, I know.
Stephanie?
Yeah, is it possible, since we're doing the curb and the curbing, into April, May, to float that into the curb, quote unquote, what I would call the curb appeal, so that we build the ramps into the curbing? Just a thought.
Possible. I think the challenge there is that, yeah, without any cars there, that's certainly possible. I don't know if that would be confusing, because of course, when there are cars there, they wouldn't be ramps that would be legal, if you will. Certainly we can give that some thought. I know, if we go with the downtown master plan, putting money aside, the long-term solution would be to rebuild Minor Street, so you have sloped access to every business, and then it would all go to the middle of the street, and then the pedestrians would be in the middle of the street, but you could still accommodate vehicles. You could still open and close it seasonally. So, but that obviously that's going to require a lot more design and planning, and we'll have to find the funding for that as well. So I think we'll give that some thought. That might be a possibility.
Jared, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just I really like that concept. We would have to, I know a lot of work's been done on the bidding process, et cetera, for that work. We would have to change the scope substantially, because once we get outside of the curb itself, then we're into those pavers and making that slope, et cetera. It would be kind of a substantial change. It's something that, as Administrator Marsh mentioned, that's certainly worth looking into. It'd be great to incorporate it, but it might be a little bit beyond our current scope and a little challenging to implement at this time.
All right.
Sadie, if I may ask, from the feedback you've gotten from the businesses and the property owners, are you thinking that, or does it sound like it would operate, this activated area in the sidewalk, would it operate similar to the spaces that are currently roped off? And what I mean by that is you have some businesses and property owners who participate and some who don't. Is that what you would envision, or do you see it be affecting all businesses, or how would that look like?
I think every restaurant is intending to activate. So every restaurant on Minor Street has the desire to use the sidewalk as well as a little bit into the street to create their patio zone for the Minor Street Marketplace. While some retail did choose to activate, most did not. So we do have those large gaps of spaces where there were not activations. I do know that more people are interested in participation, as well as because we have a larger buildup. I know places like Kind Mountain and myself and some of the other businesses are still very interested in using that space in front. So it would be kind of a configuration thing. I know Jared and John and I have spent quite a bit of time talking about the different possibilities, the ways to funnel pedestrians with signage and the flower planters. So I do think that all the restaurants will for sure be activating their spaces, and a larger number of retailers, I believe, would also be interested in activating theirs. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Jared, what do you have?
Yeah, one question I had in regards to that design and that layout is, are the restaurants amenable to having that step down? So would you have tables on the sidewalk and then step down and additional seating on the street itself? Is that the goal?
Yes, that is the goal. We did talk about the plausibility of leveling it out. I think most businesses feel at this time until that is the goal long term with the downtown master plan. Everybody loves the idea of it being one, one level with maybe sloped down to the center for drainage, obviously. Right now, due to rain and other things, it would be cost prohibitive for them to be leveling out their space. So most of them would be, all of them, as far as I know, except for maybe one who Mountain Prime is considering leveling their space out. Most of them are fine with the step down. So they would have the step down and have some, planters and flowers so that their patrons and stuff are aware of the step down. So for safety concerns, but they are all fine with not it being 2 levels.
Okay.
All of our businesses, almost all of us have weird step downs in odd places because we're in very old buildings. So
I just wanted to make sure that I understood the scope there. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, good to know. Anybody have anything else? Well, I want to thank everybody. A great meeting. Look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. And have a good rest of your day. We'll see you soon.
Bye.